have a pre-order out right now for the Raventree Society, which is a supernatural short story serial, and that's out on the 23rd.
Raventree cereal?
Yeah, the Raventree Society.
Oh, Society.
Mm-hmm.
What's it about?
It is. Are you familiar with Supernatural on CW?
Yeah, I only know of it because Phyllis Day was on it a few times.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar in the vein, though a little bit toned down. The basic idea is it's a guy who um, has paranormal investigation TV show,
Mm-hmm.
and his little brother goes missing on one of the episodes. And about 3 months later, he starts having supernatural incidents with ghosts who are targeting him, and then also having visions of the people who the ghost killed before. Um, and so it's very episodic. Each episode is kind of similar in tone to the last one, and it's also got a strong family overtone because it's also dealing with him trying to fit in with his blended family and whatnot. So
Do you just have is it just a regular ghost that's killing people, or is it a special type of spirit or
well,
whatnot?
in each different I call them
Uh,
episodes.
my kids are awake. They're stomping like crazy upstairs.
Oh, sorry. Um,
Do you hear that?
yeah,
There's this like shopping cart filled with railroad parts, and my son just knocked it over. Thank you, Hank.
rough
it's
and tumble boys.
it's kind of my fault. I let them take a gigantic nap today, so that's why they're awake right now.
Uh,
They wouldn't even go to sleep if we wanted them to.
yep.
Different episodes.
Oh yeah. Each episode deals with a different ghost. And it's kind of um it's aimed the main character is trying to find out what happened to his brother, and he's finding out that these supernatural episodes are connected with that. So he's trying to figure out what's going on, and at the same time, pretty much everywhere he goes, there's ghosts that are targeting him. So they're just ghosts, but each one's a little bit different and has a slightly different backstory and a different way it functions.
Why did you decide on this topic?
Um, it just kind of interested me at the time. It seemed like a good way to round out. I wanted to round out my brand so I'm not just doing cyberpunk, because even though that's kind of my interest right now, I am going to be doing a fantasy in 2019 next year. Um, so I wanted to be able to round out my brand a little bit. Um,
It
and
was interesting. I talked to a guy just recently who actually he was my second to last podcast, something like that.
yeah.
Garrett Robinson, I believe was his name. I'm messing it up left and right, but I believe his name is Garrett Robinson. And we were talking about genre shifting and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like the thrillers? Do you read them too? Is this something that you normally would like? Because I love the macabre. I love like this type of stuff, thrillers and weird
Yeah.
tales and science fiction. Kind of, what do they call it when you bounce between a bunch of stuff? Oh man, it's a word.
Genre hopping, genre
Yeah, but
blending.
it's kind of like genre blending, but there's an actual word for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that stuff. And if you could find yourself being successful with this, could you see yourself writing in this vein forever and giving up cyberpunk?
I don't know if I'd ever give up cyberpunk because I definitely love it. I know, like, marketing wise, it's better to stick with one genre, but I kind of like a bit of everything. And when it comes to the supernatural, like, I'm much more interested in um the kind of real stories, although I don't actually believe in ghosts, but the nonfiction side of things. I don't often dabble in the fiction side of things just because I find that they're all often really cheapened for like easy scare. Um, but when they're well done, I really enjoy it.
So, what
So
makes you think that one genre is the only thing that you should do? Have you read that someplace, or did you hear that from a specific author?
oh yeah, I've heard of multiple authors, multiple podcasts, just because it solidifies your branding so that your reader knows what to expect. Um, and that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of eager to put this out. I'm putting out 5 episodes in a year, and then I'm going to do a collection in October with all 5 short stories. Each are about 10,000 words.
Hmm.
And I want to do that for 3 years and kind of round out this particular storyline, see how people like it, and I could definitely continue or do a full book or a book series. Um, and I lost my train of thought.
Well, I mean, you're a speculative author. I mean, that's basically what
Yeah,
you are. You're a science fiction. You like fantasy. You like the stuff that makes people go, hmm. You
exactly.
like to make up worlds and whatnot. And I don't see you going, you know what? I'm going to go from speculative to romance or mysteries or something along those lines. I mean, you might, blend the romance and the mystery into one of your speculative fiction pieces. I don't think you necessarily have to stick with cyberpunk. You know what I mean? That's just like a
Yeah,
subset of speculative fiction.
it is. It is. And even though it's easier for readers, I think, when you stick with one genre. I've also heard a few other authors, mainly Brandon Sanderson, who does believe that you need to broaden out, and they're talking more about subgenres, like subgenres of fantasy, versus different genres, like saying science fiction and fantasy um, and thriller and whatnot. Um,
So I
but
think
just
Sanderson's actually considered science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah, I think he's done a little bit of both. And
Hmm.
it's kind of just managing expectations, which is why I wanted to start out so early. And that was what my train of thought was. Why I wanted to start out so early. I'm still publishing the trilogy and I still intend to have that out by the end of the year. But I wanted these short stories in there to kind of show that I, flex my muscles in some other areas. So it's not a big surprise when I'm like, okay, I'm done with science fiction for a while and here's my fantasy, and people won't be shocked or upset that I'm not doing science fiction.
What's really interesting to me is that you could actually take some of these horror stories and send them out to some magazines and potentially broaden your reading base by getting your fiction underneath some eyeballs that way.
Yeah,
Have you?
I've thought about that. I'm doing I recently joined a marketing collective called the Phoenix Fiction Writers. And I'm managing the newsletter for them, and we're doing a collection of short stories. And I have a cyberpunk short story, and I have thought about, after a few years sending it out, well, maybe just a year, sending it out to a few different publications, see if I can get it in a magazine or something.
I would totally do that. That's what I'm doing now. I'm sending everything out that I possibly can, short fiction wise,
Yeah,
just trying to get that under some eyeballs. I mean, I'm getting feedback. I'm getting published too, which is fantastic. That's
that's
the best thing.
awesome.
People are, coming back and saying, "Hey, I really like this story, but the ending just made no sense to me whatsoever." And I get to look at that and go, "All right, well, how can I make this ending better?" It's the
Yeah,
mystery of the whole thing. And I think it strengthens the writing as a general whole.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely feedback.
what I'm fascinated with though is that you're writing these ghost stories, but you actually have, maybe I'm wrong, but you have no interest in ghosts.
I have interest in ghosts and in the supernatural. Being a Christian, I don't actually believe in ghosts. I believe in demons, but I have had a number of experiences that could be explained in multiple different ways.
Ooh,
Um,
I want to hear some experiences.
yeah, I have what's called sleep paralysis.
Ooh, that's awful.
It's it's actually quite widespread. There's 2 veins of thought when it comes to sleep paralysis. One is that it's supernatural, that it's caused by demons or aliens or ghosts or whatever you want to apply that to.
And then there's me who thinks it's neurotic.
Yeah, and
Neurological,
there's also the
neurological, not
scientific.
neurotic, neurological.
Yes, I'm completely neurotic. There is a neurological side, and I tend more towards that because I tend more to be science based. However, most people who have experienced it, there are similar dreams that pop up. There's the old hag, which is a woman who sits on your chest and holds you down and makes it so you can't breathe. A number of
Oh
people have
yeah,
experienced that.
that's from mythology too. That's that old hag shows up a lot. Some people
Yeah,
actually
well,
consider it a vampire.
there is
Did we
there's a
talk about that before? No, I don't think so. I think that came up someplace else.
Yeah,
That's
it's
interesting.
common in multiple different cultures. There's a few different versions of it. In one version, it's a mare, which is where nightmare comes from, which is the same thing. Um, there's also incubus, succubus, demon side of things. Basically, what's happening is when you wake up, there's a switch. How they explain it? There's a switch that turns off when you're in REM sleep to keep your body from acting out. And that's, sleepwalking, which I actually am a sleepwalker as well. Um, so I have a number of like sleep disorders. Um, and
Your
then
husband.
with sleep paralysis, what's happening is you wake up and you're aware. However, your brain is still kind of not allowing your body to function as if it's awake.
Hmm.
So you experience things in the room with you, you see things in the room with you, you can't move, and you have this feeling of panic and terror,
Yeah.
and you'll see things in the room. And I've actually had the experience, I've had it both where I can't move, and I've also had it where I've sat up and there's things in the room with me, and they've talked with me and they touched me, and I've still been dreaming until I turn on the light and convince my brain, okay, there's nothing there, and then I can go back to sleep.
Oh wow, that's
Um,
spooky. A lot
and
of
I,
people that have sleep paralysis get abducted by aliens. I mean, there's a connection between being abducted by aliens and sleep paralysis.
exactly.
It's really fascinating.
And that's the out of body experience, which I've had once or twice as well, where you feel like you're lifting up out of your body and moving elsewhere. Oftentimes, there's a malevolent presence in the room. There's a light or warmth or heat. Um, Sometimes you can feel things touching you, stuff like that. So that's why alien abductions are all often suggested that it's connected with sleep paralysis.
It's interesting to me is nothing positive happens. You know what I mean? You're not nothing good. No
Yeah,
angels or no visions of the future, or you're not, you know, solving problems. You're seeing nightmares. You're seeing
exactly.
horrible things. I mean, you're being abducted by aliens, you're being kidnapped, you're being haunted by old ladies sitting on your chest where you can't breathe. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so I haven't actually had any experiences for a while. Um, but for me in particular, one of the reasons why I'm kind of on the edge of whether I believe that it's just something that happens with your body or whether it's demonic, as I explained before, I'm a Christian, I do believe in demons, is because when I was younger, I had an eating disorder. And if I would eat, I would wake up every 30 minutes with these experiences. If I stopped eating, I would be able to sleep just fine. And there was also an element to them that was very hard to explain exactly. It was not that they were um, prophetic in any way. They didn't tell me the future, but often I would have a dream and then there would be something that happened that was connected that would bring out the themes in that dream really strongly to kind of be a psychological thing. Um, but yeah, ever since having those experiences, I mean, as long as I can remember, I've seen, I was terrified of the dark. I've seen things in the room with me. I felt things touch me. So I've always had an interest in the paranormal because of that. And it's
Hmm.
something, it's very, very common with writers to have this sleep paralysis. And it's definitely something that does come into the supernatural and the more horror side, although I wouldn't probably classify it as horror, Raventree, but it definitely has, those experiences have informed my writing.
It's interesting. I don't even remember my dreams when I sleep at night.
Yeah,
I would love to
it's a
have
very
something.
odd
You know,
experience.
I only had one dream where I flew. Flew in the
Yeah.
air. That was an amazing experience, and I've always wanted to have more of those type experiences. The Have you ever explored what do they call it? Livid dreaming? Not livid. Vivid dreaming? No, what is it called where you're controlling your dreams?
I know what you're talking about. Lucid dreaming.
Lucid dreaming. Have you ever experimented with anything like that?
I haven't, just because I do know that I had that sleep paralysis episodes. I don't want to bring that on again. Um, so there's some similar kind of, the way your brain works is kind of similar in both. So because you're kind of awake while you're dreaming, and lucid dreaming, you're trying to make that happen.
Yeah.
And sleep paralysis, it's kind of happening, in lucid dreaming, you're trying to do it as you're going to sleep. In sleep paralysis, it happens when you come out of deep sleep.
I think lucid dreaming, because you dream every night, right? I mean, when you
Mhm.
enter, what's it called? What's the acronym stand for? Who the hell knows? Um, you uh, you're controlling what happens. You're aware that you're dreaming, and you could actually live within that dream state anywhere you want. You can explore your subconscious, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and it's definitely interesting to me. Um, but it's just not something that I've really, because of my experiences with sleep disorders, it's not something that I really want to explore that much, because it has been so recent that I've quit having these experiences. I'm like, I don't really want to play around with that concept at all. I've had enough
Hmm.
bad experiences.
So, being a Christian, you believe only in demons? What does that mean?
I don't believe in ghosts. I believe that when you die, and I know there are some Christians who do believe in ghosts. However, I believe that when you die, your spirit goes directly to heaven or hell. Um, I believe,
No purgatory?
I don't
That
know,
was a Catholic
I'm
thing,
not
yeah.
Catholic. Um, because I believe you don't go to heaven based on deeds. You go to heaven based on whether or not you know and love Christ.
Hmm.
Um, Demons, in my understanding, are angels who have fallen from heaven, and so they're here on earth. They're not in hell. Um, so I do believe there's demonic activity happening. I just don't believe it's something that I need to be particularly worried about, and then it's not something that I'm like, oh, that's demonic. Oh, that's demonic. Like most things, I attribute to just life. You know,
Do you believe in possession?
I believe.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to figure out what's informing your writing in terms
Yeah,
of the,
no, that's
the
fine.
creative aspect of it. When you're writing, can you write about ghosts? You said these stories are about ghosts particularly,
Yes.
but
Yep.
ghosts typically don't hurt anybody. I mean, they don't have the capability of harming anybody. So that's kind of demonic that they're able to murder and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's the next aspect, just fiction writing. You kind of get to make up your own world, and the aspects of that world, and whether a ghost can hurt someone or not, and stuff like that.
That's
Um,
very true. So, I mean, what do they do? Do they become physical to do it, or they possess items to harm or murder, or have you gotten that far?
I keep it intentionally vague. I find that the scariest things are the things that we don't fully understand. So I've kind of infused a lot of more demonic stuff into my ghosts on purpose. Um, the the basic idea is the ghost can interact with a physical plane, but as of right now, my character can't fight back at all. So he
Yeah.
doesn't understand. He can't grab them or push them or. But each ghost, different ghosts have weaknesses that he does interact with, um, and he kind of learns that as he goes. Um, I don't I kind of play with different rules for every ghost, and I definitely I want to keep things very vague, because I want that kind of same experience of discovering it for the first time and not knowing how to fight it and not knowing what's going to happen next in each episode. So I don't want the idea that the reader can go in and go, okay, the ghost is going to come, and all he has to do is, say I'm supernatural, burn the bones. So all he has to do is go find the bones and burn them.
Hmm.
So I tried to keep it intentionally vague and intentionally change it up quite often.
What I find neat is that you're experimenting with different ways to tell a story.
Yeah.
You're examining the mechanics of storytelling here. Plot is so devastatingly important, and you're kind of
Mhm.
working that and trying to see how you could tell the best supernatural story.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And
can't.
that's, go ahead.
No, please. I was going to say that Ghost in the Machine is basically what you're writing about with your other topic. Humanity intermingling with technology and
Hmm.
manipulating the genes and stuff like that. And this is kind of the same thing, where you kind of have the ghost in the machine, but the ghost is an actual ghost manipulating the living world
Yeah.
in a sense, in a way. And that's very fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the core of speculative fiction and the the desire of readers going into speculative fiction, and that's kind of what I base my brand on, is that exploration of the unknown, um, of the what ifs. And that's not something that you're going to see in a non-speculative fiction genre. There's discovery and there's exploration, yes, but in speculative fiction you have the ability to take it as far as you want to, or put whatever rules you want to on it. So you could really pose that what if question in a way you can't with other genres.
So you use this word brand
Hmm.
very interestingly. I never considered my books part of a brand, just trying to
Yeah,
tell a story. I mean, obviously I'm not going to make a fool of myself on Twitter or Facebook or anything, because I am very careful about how I use my name and my presence. But
yeah.
when I write a story, I'm trying to entertain in a way that I'm not considering a branding necessarily. Where do you mean by brand?
I'm using it in the way, there's a book I read beginning of this year. It's called Your Book, Your Brand. I can't remember the author at the moment. I apologize, but it is on my Goodreads. And she is a professional marketer, and she explains how to apply branding to writing fiction in particular. And she takes an approach that's more towards traditional publishing, but she explains how you can use your brand to market. And the way
Is this
she,
Dana K? Dana
yes,
Dana
yes,
K.
I believe that's her. Um, so it was a very interesting book to read, and definitely kind of changed my opinion on it. And the way she approaches it is not that you are forcing your writing into um, a certain mold. It's not that you are trying to, um, for instance, write to market, which is, I believe, Chris Fox is an indie author who talks about that extensively, about writing what's hot at the moment. You're not changing your writing in order to force it into these parameters. What you are, however, doing is, as a writer, we have certain things that are going to show up again and again in our writing, and that's because we're passionate about certain things. There are certain things that have formed us as people, and certain things that we love to explore in our fiction. And so, in branding, what you're doing is you're looking for that kind of thread, and you're accentuating that while you're writing, yes, but in your branding as well. So, for instance, in my branding, I put exploratory fiction. And the idea is that I'm using that aspect of the speculative fiction reader wanting to explore new worlds and also explore the limits of the human being. And I'm using that to draw interest to my books. And then also when I'm writing, I'm trying to accentuate that part that already comes naturally to me of just exploring the different, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. But do you want to talk about what you're doing in terms of this is my brand? Or do you want to have that be like kind of the mechanics behind the man behind the curtain, basically?
It definitely it informs everything that I'm doing when it comes to marketing. Not so much when it comes to writing. In the final passes, I will consider how it impacts my brand. For instance, when I was writing Raventree, I specifically wrote it because I wanted something to round out my brand as being a speculative fiction writer and not just a science fiction cyberpunk writer. And I also chose to put it out now because I don't want too much time to pass with me writing only one type of story. However,
Hmm.
it's something I would have written anyways. It's something that I'm interested in anyways. It was in my idea folder, so it's not like it was something I wouldn't write.
When you write something, are you instantly looking for ways to market it? Is that part of the
Uh,
fun for you?
I think it depends. It depends on the book. Like with Malfunction and the Malfunction trilogy, it like I started writing in order to get my name out there, but it definitely wasn't in the forefront of my mind. When I'm writing, the one thing I care most about is creating a good story. Um, doing the very best I can with what I understand, what I know, and making something that's as good as I can possibly do at the moment. With Raventree, it was kind of there. Like it definitely entered my thoughts when I was considering what to write next. Um, but it's not like as I'm writing it, like, yes, I'm concerned about, for instance, in episode two, there's a particular flashback scene that might be a little bit harder for certain readers. So I've asked my critique partners to focus on that and tell me what their emotional reaction is. But that's part of writing a good story as well. You want to be considerate of your readers, the people who put their trust into you and have read your books and enjoyed them. You don't want to betray that trust. Um, they're giving, not only are they giving you their money, but they're also giving you their time, which is very valuable, and they're allowing your books to influence their subconscious, which is extremely valuable. So I don't want to betray that.
Hmm.
Um, so it's kind of a balance. Like I wouldn't be writing if I wasn't writing for myself. There's much more profitable businesses to be in. I want to write, and I write what I want to write. Um, so marketing isn't the first thing I think of. However, um, I am always trying to be aware of my readership and how my writing will affect them, because in the end, I am writing for someone. The first draft is for me, but with each progressive draft that I'm writing it for someone else. You know?
Hmm. That's very interesting because you are 100% indie, right? You don't want to
Yeah.
veer into traditional publishing at all,
I'm thinking
or
about going hybrid possibly in 2019. I have a urban fantasy that I kind of have sketched out a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, I think, and I was just talking about this earlier on another interview. Um, I would not accept something if I feel like it wasn't going to support my career. Um, I'm not going to jump at the first contract that I get because I already have a readership. I already have something that I'm building here. Um, so I would like the experience. I would love to see my books in a brick and mortar bookstore. It opens up possibilities of so much more that I could do with my intellectual property, like movies, board games, all those kind of things that traditional publishing, I'll be able to reach that much faster, much easier. Um, and it would also broaden my readership a little bit. And there's still a lot of people who consider indie publishing to be, the dropouts. So I think it could affect me in a positive way.
What do you mean
However,
dropout?
like
Wh-
people who couldn't make it traditionally published, who tried and just they weren't good enough, you know?
There's a
Um,
lot out there. It seems to be pretty much everybody.
yeah, there's a lot of people who still consider it that. There's a growing movement of people who are seeing it differently because indie publishers are starting to break up into two tiers: those who treat it as a serious business and those who just occasionally put out a book because it's fun, um, which is fine. I mean, each one is equally valid. Um, However, if you put out a crappy book, it does affect all of us. So I will say that. Um, but the quality of book that I would put out for a traditional publisher would be the same as I would put out for myself. So if someone picked me up, um, there wouldn't be any difference in that. You know,
Do you find that your stratagem for marketing is beneficial to you in terms of what you're doing right now and how you're getting your stuff out there? I mean, are you seeing like a drastic increase in readership, or is it kind of more like beating at the wind?
it's. I feel like I haven't been doing it long enough. I think a lot of people expect it to happen really quickly, but I'm not putting out any paid ads right now. I haven't done any major giveaways or anything like that because I only have two books out. Um, I don't have enough to offer someone right now. So once I have a larger, like I think at the end of this year is when I'm going to start thinking about doing some paid ads to reach a broader base.
Have you ever heard of a BookBub?
I have.
What are your
Um,
what's your opinion of them? What have you heard?
I've heard only good things. Um, I think there was only one time I heard someone suggest that the impact is starting to fade a little bit. It used to be you could get a book bub and it would boost your book for a year and it would boost your brand indefinitely, meaning your other books would sell and you would be more well known. Um, but because there's so many people indie publishing now and more people are treating it as a business, and it's not what they would call the gold rush days anymore. Um, when you get a book bub now, you'll probably be a bestseller in your category for sure, and definitely get up there on Amazon. But it's going to be a couple weeks, and then Amazon is very quick to actually push those down.
That is very interesting, isn't it? In terms of independent publishing, there's a lot of people out there that just say, I'm just going to publish it myself. I did the same thing with my novel. I mean, I barely looked for an agent, did
Hmm.
not did not contact any publishers whatsoever, and just put it on Amazon just to see if I can get some kind of reviews or what would happen. Actually, just an exploration of what the whole world is, indie
Yeah,
publishing or whatever. And it just seems like everybody's doing that now too. They're not even going through the traditionally published routes anymore. Seems
yeah,
like those doors are kind of closed. At least the big guys, anyway.
yeah. But I mean, there's still um, traditional publish still has a kind of a foothold on the public mind, so to speak. Hollywood is just now starting to reach out towards indie publishers. They've just picked up, I think, three or four that they've purchased the rights to and are looking into creating some content on those. Um, so traditional publishers still kind of dominate in that, but that's changing very quickly. Um, so I think a lot of people still have the dream of being traditionally published, but they don't put it the same. It's not the only way to get published anymore.
Well, I don't even know what my dream is in terms of getting my book out underneath people's eyes. I just finished my second one.
Yeah.
So, I'm going through the process of rewriting, and my
Hmm.
alpha's reading it, and I've got some people lined up to do a beta on it.
That's
But at the
great.
same time, I have no clue what I'm going to do with that novel once it's actually finished. Hold on to it, basically, I think. I
Yeah.
think I made a mistake with Compounded, putting it out there to begin with. I should have held on to it. I should have made it the best novel it probably could have been instead of ruining it by putting it on Amazon. I think that's what a lot of people do is they jump the gun. They get excited. They have, they give
Exactly.
birth to this little thing, this baby, and they're like, well, shit, I got to show it to the world. And then you put it out there and it gets buried by what, 3,000 books a day. I mean, those numbers are ridiculous. And it
Yeah,
doesn't, I was talking with an author yesterday. We did a podcast on Brandon Sanderson, and you know how much he writes. It's ridiculous. He's got
yeah.
50 books out, and he's only like a year older than me.
They're
It's
big books too.
ridiculous. Yeah, they're huge. I mean, I don't understand how he can do that and still be considered a quality writer. It's magnificent. It's magical, kind of, in a way.
Well, it is his full-time job.
Well, no, he's a teacher.
Yeah, that's right. He's a professor.
You know, he's a professor. And it's like, and he was a missionary at one point, and he didn't start getting published until he was in his 30s. I mean, how?
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How? You know, I'm going to be starting my third novel here. I have actually put some words down, and I have a direction I want to take it in, and
Hmm.
starting to think about other things I need to do too. But man, he makes you want to put a fire under your ass. But that's not really my point. My point is, you know, you have to get stuff written, number
Hmm.
one, and you have to have a plan, number two.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't seem like, you were saying, an independent publisher just means you have kind of given up a little bit. You can work your ass off. You can work these angles like a Joanna Penn or whatever, but it's not the golden age anymore. The way they're saying it'll work is not going to work. BookBub, like you just said, might not be the best answer anymore, but it was the best answer X number of years ago. Like, what we know is what people have already done and succeeded at. We have no clue what's going to be successful going forward.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the fun of it. Um, and I think honestly, I think when we're looking at self-publishing, like the more it becomes a valid option, the more you're going to have to really work to put your name out there and do it right.
Well,
And I
I
think,
would say that it's a total valid option for everybody. You know what I mean?
oh yeah,
It's
and that's
available
the
for
benefit.
100% of anybody who calls themselves a writer. They can put something out. It's
Exactly.
there. And no one's going to stop you. I mean, Amazon wants you to do it. They're like, go ahead, put your story on Amazon. You know, if
Yeah.
it's, is it 10 pages long? That's fine. Is it a page long? That's fine. You want to copy some, public domain books? That's fine too. You know, just put your stuff on Amazon. We don't care for some reason. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so
Well, they're
basically,
getting stricter.
are they? I
Oh
don't know.
yeah. Yeah, they're getting stricter. Um, it's harder to get a book trending now because they you can put your book on, but that doesn't mean anyone's going to see it. Amazon is very careful in who they promote. Um, so there's
Hmm.
a difference between being able to publish and having Amazon actually back you. Um, and when I say back you, not necessarily that they'll put their name on you, but that they'll allow you to be, you know, a bestseller and on the top of their list without being like, oh wow, look how fast they rose up.
Hmm.
Because their algorithms, if you rise really fast in the rankings, their algorithms will usually flag you as being a con artist.
Yeah, right. You
Hmm.
know who Logan Paul is? Probably do, right? He's been in the
Don't. No, I'm not familiar with that name.
Oh,
I've probably, if he's been on podcasts, I've probably heard him. I just don't remember.
no, I think he's a YouTube guy, and he's the one
Okay.
who had taken video of the suicide in the Japanese forest. I don't know if you follow the news, but he's been making, headlines lately
Uh,
because of his stupidity. But anyway, the reason that I mentioned him basically is how he got started in not podcasting, as he got started in Vine and became popular with young ladies. He's a blonde dude with muscles or whatever. But he and about 5 or 6 other people got together and they would promote each other's work. They would just, pump each other up and do this and that and the other thing. So I mean, it was like names are being mentioned 5 or 6 times, so they rose in the charts and they're millionaires. You know what I mean? They're worth
yeah.
lots and lots of money. I just really think you can't do it alone anymore. You can't
Oh,
be by
definitely.
yourself. You have to have a group of people working with you and for you. And
Yeah, networking is essential. If you think of it um as a business, you're looking at yourself as a publisher. I am a publishing company. I'm not a company, but you know. And so I am, in essence, up against the big five. However, the big five have multiple um, books coming out every month. They have multiple authors working for them. They have multiple avenues in which to promote. So in order to keep up, or at least be able to get my books out there and be heard, I'm going to have much more output. I'm going to have quality that's at least comparable. And it's going to be a long, hard road. Like, I can't just put out a book and expect it to do well. I have to put out, 3, 4, 5, 10 books and put them out quickly and promote them and get reviews and connect with my readership. However, I have angles in which those big five never will, and that's that I can connect directly to my readers,
Hmm.
where they don't. They work with their, the bookstores and the Hollywood executives and whatnot.
My opinion is if you want to be successful, you got to win award. You have to win awards. You have to put your words in places where people are being respected. The big one for me right now, huge name in the market that I'm trying to sell my fiction to is Clark's World. I don't know. Are you familiar with them at all?
No.
They're just a science fiction fantasy magazine, but they put out Hugo award-winning authors. I mean, they put out, if Orson Scott Card writes something, he's going through them to get it published or whatever.
Hmm.
Getting work in places like that will get your name noticed, and potentially, the publishing companies will take note as well.
Yeah.
I talked to a lady yesterday. She works for the Science Fiction Guild of America. I think it's SFGA.
Okay.
Um, and oh man, I lost my train of thought. It's contagious. What was she was gonna say? She was talking about well, anyway, I know one thing she was talking about is how inundated the independent book world is in
Hmm.
terms of how many people are out there and who you're fighting against.
Yes, but you do have to consider that most of that is people who put out one, maybe two books, short books that are really low quality. So you just kind of have to rise to the top of the chaff. And then once you make those connections and you have good networking and you have solid work, you have good book covers, you have a readership. I believe it's Tim Graw who talks about the
Who? Tim
thousand.
Tim Graw?
Tim Graw. He is a marketer who also works on the Story Good podcast. He
Oh,
kind
okay.
of headed that up. So he's quite well known name actually in indie publishing. He worked with Hugh Howey on Wool, and he has a set formula to get people to the top of most lists and to New York Times bestsellers and whatnot. But what was And yeah, here we go again. This is just all night. We're just going to keep losing our train of thought. But I think essentially what I'm trying to say is, trying to do those big, awards and BookBub and whatnot are all well and good. However, what's going to work much better is reader by reader by reader influencing and growing your tribe. And as people gain interest in you as a person and as a writer and enjoy your work, they're going to suggest it to their friends and family, and it's going to start growing. And you, as a self publisher, you don't need to be a big name. You don't need to have movies done. You don't need to have, a reach around the globe to be able to make a living.
It's very interesting because I mean it is all very intimate, isn't it? Because I don't think I've ever read an independent author. I don't think I've ever like somebody has recommended a book and I've went out and gotten it and said, "Oh, this person doesn't have a publisher." I've
Yeah.
only I don't think I've ever in my entire life done that. Bought an independent book. I don't buy books anyway anymore, but I mean in terms of, reading people, I don't think the last 25 books I read were indies. Or for that matter, have read ever an indie author. The reason I bring that up is I was thinking about it I was walking the dog and listening to a marketing podcast, and this guy was talking about, all these things that you can do to make some money with your book. And I just I thought to myself, who is buying your book? Who are you? What are you writing? It doesn't even seem like you care what you're writing. You're just writing everything. He kept calling his books the superhero books or whatever.
Hmm.
Doesn't get into characters, doesn't get into plots. It doesn't seem like he has any love for it at all. He's trying to sell books like toilet paper or, you know, fur coats or something along those lines. Like, dude, what are you doing? He's struggling to get 5,000 sales or whatever. And I'm thinking, who are those 5,000 people? Who's buying your book?
Yeah, and there's definitely a side of self-publishing where people can get too much into the business. And there's a few authors that I can think of right now where I've read their books and they're not good. They don't have a basic grasp on some of the foundational concepts of fiction writing. However, they're very, very well-known writers because they are so good at marketing. Um, and there's definitely the especially romance writers who will
Yeah,
put
that R
out.
word is easy, isn't it? If you wrote romance, you could basically start writing checks because it's like
Yeah,
it's an easy market, isn't it? Those write
it
a
is.
couple hundred-page book and people want that stuff.
Yeah, and once you hook your readers, you hook your readers. Um, from what I understand with the romance readers, they don't trust easily, but once they trust you, they'll buy everything, and they're voracious readers.
Hmm.
It's not an area in which I have any interest.
I
But
don't
yeah,
either.
there's definitely
I
I
feel like
think there's
I feel like the
two
bottom's gonna fall out of that market though. Once
eventually probably. But I mean, they're writing erotica. It's porn hasn't gone anywhere. Hookers haven't gone anywhere, and so erotica is not going anywhere.
so it's not just romance though, it's erotica.
It is. It is. It's erotica. That's it is specifically what people are making money on, and that's not anything new. People have been making money off of sex for eons. So that's it's really not surprising. And of course, that does well in ebooks because you can be sitting on the train and no one knows what you're reading.
Yeah,
You know, that's where what's that 50 Shades sold the most is in ebooks.
that's very true. It's very true. You don't have to be embarrassed by the cover or whatever. You can actually get into
Exactly.
that stuff. And
Yep.
I'm never gonna write a romance. I'm not ever gonna write an erotica because I like the stuff that I do write.
Yeah.
I love writing about random speculative topics.
Yeah. And there's two different, I think, in the upper echelon of indie authors, the people who are actually making money and doing it in a business like way. There's the people who rush and put out a book a month, and very often, and I don't want to be denigrating because there are so many people who do a good job, but they're short books. They're not too concerned with craft. They hit the tropes. So they're kind of the same thing that you'd expect from any science fiction, just not well researched. Space opera. I'm sorry, I'm not a big space opera fan. Um, and they're putting it out really fast. They have hundreds of books, multiple pen names, and they're writing to market. They're hitting what's hot at the moment. However, you see their books sell really well for 2 or 3 months, and then they kind of disappear. Um, and they make good money, but it's kind of they burn out fast. You can't have that kind of output and keep up with it. It's exhausting. Um, and eventually people get bored of that and move on. And then there's the other vein, which is, I'm in that vein, which is you write quality fiction, you sell quality fiction, and it's much harder to make it. You have to take the long view. But if your books make it, they're going to be there for a while.
I don't know. I have no clue because I don't have a long view. I'm gonna write and then I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I'm gonna send it out to the short fiction magazines, and once I have my novel, I'll just hold on to it. I think I'm just gonna hold on to the one I just wrote and see what
Yeah,
happens. I don't know.
and there's
I
nothing
mean,
wrong with that. Having being patient until you know what you want to do.
yeah, I mean, I have my eyes set on certain authors like John Scalzi or something like that. I'd like to be that person writing some cool science fiction novels and, maybe throw some cool fantasy novels out there too.
Hmm.
but I don't want to give it away. I mean, I feel bad about Compounded. I'm like, damn, I could have done maybe another draft on that or something. I just got so annoyed with the amount of non-interaction with agents. Like
Yeah,
nothing was happening. I mean, you send out all these query letters and it was like a black hole of nothing. Never considered sending out the publishers directly.
yeah. Well, that's, the great thing with self-publishing is you can take that down, you can rework it, you can wait a few months, get a new cover, rebrand, and publish it again and make it look like something new. Um, and that's the benefit with self-publishing, I think, is that with traditionally published, you have one stinker, and your career is at least in a nosedive, if not over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. I mean, nobody knows I wrote Compounded unless I tell them.
Yeah, there's a lot of authors who do that, and that's especially with your first novel. I wrote a 200,000 word fantasy novel before I wrote Malfunction, and I wrote Malfunction before I put Revelation. I put Revelation out first, for multiple reasons, a lot of them marketing reasons, but also because I knew that I was a better author when I wrote Revelation than I was when I wrote Malfunction. And I was a better author when I wrote Malfunction than I was when I wrote that fantasy novel. And I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to put it out in 2019, but I'm going to do it when it's a good book, not when
Yeah.
it's a first draft of my first real book,
So what is Ravenwood? It's a serial, you said? How long are the
Raventree.
chapter the
Yeah, go ahead.
Raventree, I apologize. How long are the parts? They're not
Each,
novels though, right?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
They're not novels though, are they?
No. They're 10,000 words, which I think is technically not a short story, it's a novelette.
Yeah,
Um,
novelette, yeah.
so each episode is 10,000. And I am considering lengthening the final episode in the end of, 3 years down the road. I am thinking about making it a little bit longer. Um, but yeah, they're all connected. There's one overarching storyline that will cover the 3 years. Um, but they are, like I said, they're episodic. So if you put them together, they wouldn't read like a book. They're much more like, well, I did, like Supernatural. I think is the closest of what they would be in tone. But they're much more like a crime drama almost that you would see on TV. There's kind of a storyline there, but there's a set formula, and each one has a different story.
And you don't think you can go back in and actually make a novel out of the individual novelettes?
I don't think I would want to. I think that this is the format where they work best. Um, I like to build big worlds. Um, Malfunction, it's a trilogy now, but I have a follow-up planned. I have a follow-up trilogy planned. I do intend to eventually go back and write a series, an apocalyptic series, prequel series from when the aliens first invade. My fantasy novels, I plan to be writing in that world for the rest of my life. I like world building, and I like to keep my worlds. Um, it might happen in Raventree, but I don't foresee that right now. I don't think it's a very big sandbox to play in.
It's very interesting that you have a 200,000 word novel just collecting dust on a shelf.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, that's like you could break that thing apart and have a series right there. Boom, boom, boom. And do what people kind of fantasize about, publish within like a 6-month period of time all the books.
Yeah. It's kind of crappy right now. Um I do I am gonna break that particular one, I believe, in half. I think I can. It's an epic fantasy, so they're they're kind of genre bred to be larger books, multiple POVs. I'm more interested in the story arc. I want a complete story arc for each book. So yeah, I do have, I believe, the makings of two books, but it's so poorly written. I didn't understand POV. I didn't understand show don't tell. I didn't understand character
Oh my
arcs.
God,
Um,
200,000 words of no showing, or and you're just telling. Man, that book could
it's
probably stretch out to like 500,000 words by the time you're done.
yeah, I think, and there's a lot of content, but a lot of it is because I built this gorgeous world. I just want to info dump and be like, oh, look at this. Oh, look at this. Which, I mean, yes, is kind of part of the genre. Um, is like, oh, look at the pretty world. But I do have a story to tell there, and I want to play around with it, see what it does with deep POV, see what it does with some solid characters, see what it does. I think right now I'm looking at, it was going to be a trilogy, but I think I'm looking at least 7 books right now.
Wow.
So yeah, that was book 1 of a trilogy, and it's the story is too big.
So where can we see Raventree? Is it already out, or will it be out soon?
It's on pre-order. So the best place to go is to go to my website, www.JelanePurrazzi.com. That's JILLANEPURRAZZI. And I have under books, you can find links to all of my books and all of the places where they're sold, or at least most of the places where they're sold. And Raventree is on pre-order. You can find links to Amazon, Kobo, iBooks, and Nook. And it's also in a few other places as well. And that'll be coming out on the 23rd, the first episode will. And I'm hoping to have a pre-order available shortly after for episode 2, which will be coming out in March.
That's the story I read.
Actually, that's not Raventree. That is a prequel novella for my Malfunction trilogy. If anyone has actually read the Malfunction trilogy, the main character's name is Cowell, one of the main characters, and readers fell in love with him. But he has an older brother who's been mentioned multiple times, and they wanted to read his story. So that is his older brother's story. I plan to do multiple prequels in this world from different characters' points of view. And that one is out next month. I put it off to next month on the 23rd.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you. So you've got a lot of things happening in a very short amount of time.
Yes, yes, I'm trying. I kind of built up my collection of short stories, novellas. I have most of my first drafts and a few second and third drafts ready. Um, so I have the entire Raventree Society, that's 5 episodes, and then one collection, which I'm hoping to do some special art, put it out as a paperback in October, and that'll be coming out. And then one prequel novella at least, possibly another one, but I don't have that drafted. I have a few short stories that I'm aiming to bring out, but the big thing is I want to finish up the last 2 books of the Malfunction trilogy and have those out this year.
Yeah, it's fascinating watching you kind of meta think these ideas and get them implemented into your, as you say, your brand. And it's exciting being able to talk to you and watch that kind of develop.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a fun journey, and I think if nothing else, even if I can't make it, um, I feel like this is an enjoyable and exciting thing, and it's really boosted my confidence. Um, and yeah, I'm just really enjoying the ride.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's the best part to me is that, I randomly ran across you on Twitter.
Yeah,
I think it was Twitter. And,
yeah,
we have had the opportunity to kind of, mush words together and discover new things. And I think that's really, really cool to watch this thing kind of happen.
yeah. I
Um,
definitely enjoyed our conversations.
and I hope to have more of them coming up. We're going to be doing a Mirage, I think next month. We're going to be
Hmm.
discussing the Treasure Island guy. What's his name? Robert Louis
Robert Louis
Stevenson.
Stevenson. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And yeah, so we're about at an hour now. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't have an opportunity to get into? I know we talked about marketing a lot, which
Yeah.
obviously is important to both of us. And I have no clue what I'm going to do going forward with this new book that I'm writing and the book that I just finished, and I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think we definitely covered kind of the basis of Raventree. They're such short stories that it's really hard to talk about without spoiling things, especially because they do have kind of the same format in every episode. So, um, probably wasn't a ton to cover in that world or in those episodes. So I think we kind of hit the mark with that for sure.
Anything interesting on your bookshelf right now, or your night table, Kindle, anything like you'd like to talk about, reading
Uh,
wise?
yeah, well, right now I'm reading I try to always have one self-published book that I'm reading. And definitely like to support the community. That's really important to me. So I'm reading a space opera slash what's the word I'm looking for? Virtual reality.
Oh,
There's
interesting.
the new, what's it, like Ready Player One is kind of, I can't remember what they're calling the subgenre right now. It's a retelling of the Count of Monte Cristo, with in a space opera setting, with a lot of like virtual reality gaming. So that's interesting, and that's with one of my. It's a co-writing between one of my favorite authors, Sarah K.L. Wilson, and another author, John Gunningham, I believe. Um, so I'm almost done with that, and then for paperbacks, I'm actually reading the Rising trilogy, um, and that's been really exciting for me because that's one of the ones I most connect Malfunction with. I only got to listen to a couple chapters on audiobook, and really like immediately was like, this is very similar to Malfunction. So being able to read it and see how similar they are and also how different they are has been really exciting for me.
I've heard of Red Rising. That's been mentioned a few times. Pierce
Mhm.
Brown's the author on that.
That's right. Yeah.
That's interesting. I might have to check it out. I'm still stuck reading Kings of the Wild right now. It's a
Oh
good
yeah.
book. Really enjoy it. It's fantasy.
Uh,
They don't even try to even hide the tropes. They're just totally enjoying it. It's a great little read. And I
yeah.
swear to God, I'm gonna read Brandon Sanderson. I have not read one of his novels yet. Have you read anything by him?
I haven't. I'm kind of collecting fantasies that I refuse to read right now because if if I read a genre where I'm going to be writing, but I'm not writing at the moment, um, I get this insane urge to drop everything that I'm doing and write in that genre. So I have this gorgeous fantasy that I want to go fix because it's a destroyed mess right now. So if I read any fantasy, especially any good fantasy, it's all over with a Malfunction trilogy.
Oh, interesting. And I've got a story on Reddit right now for the Fantasy Writers Challenge. If you want to go check it out,
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
it's a kind of a fantasy world that I'm developing in short fiction format.
Okay.
I think it's like my third version of this particular story. Not story world. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I like the story. It was fun. Let's see, what else do we have? I mean, we know where to find you.
hmm
Where can we find you? Tell me again.
The best place to find me is on my website, www.JelanePrazzi.com, and you can find links to everything from there. There's a newsletter with a exclusive short story from the Malfunction trilogy, um, links to all of my books, including one of my free prequel novellas. If you want a taste of my writing, I do a weekly blog, which Brian, you have actually been on. So if any listeners are interested in checking out that, and there's also recommendations um, for self-published authors that I suggest you reading, as well as a lot of resources for self-publishing.
Yeah, that was exciting. That story that I wrote for your website. I wrote that in like a day, like a couple hours. I love that microfiction stuff.
Yeah, I
I,
really
I
enjoyed it. It was good.
I would like to take that story and expand it a little bit potentially.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a black hole kind of pausing time in a way. It's
Yeah.
fascinating as a concept. But I really enjoyed this, and I look forward to chatting with you in February.
Yes, definitely.